Welcome to the Shuffle. I wanted to talk about misconceptions that happen in tarot, because there are a lot of them. And this conversation comes up for me in almost every single reading that I do, most readings that I do. I'll end up having to talk about it. What up, Ezra? I'm so glad that you're here. It's a pleasure to share your presence. It's been a little while. And sorry, Lemons, about jumping out of the blue. Maybe you want to take your volume down a notch. I'm apparently screaming in your ear. Nice to have you here, too. But I wanted to talk about misconceptions in tarot because it's usually one of the topics that I open with when I'm doing a reading for someone, actually. One of the first questions that I like to ask is, what's your previous experience with tarot? What's your... what have you done with it before? Because of course, I have kind of a somewhat secular approach, so it's a little different and often catches people a little bit off guard for necessarily what they're expecting when they're sitting down for a tarot card reading. I try to dispel the image and notion of rote fortune teller and move closer to spiritual counselor. I almost thought I had a note coming in from off screen. Love my little support messages. In any case, it's an important conversation to broach, and there's a lot of misconceptions out there. Thank you, Sonora, for letting me know that it's not super smooth, but okay. We'll deal with it. I'll take what I got. And Nico, that's a good question. What's a non-secular approach to tarot? The secular approach sort of omits the spiritual end of tarot. So I'm not wholly secular in my approach because I do have a spiritual inclination and kind of intention about how I go about my readings. But so the non-secular approach is will lean heavily into the divinatory aspect of tarot. I'm going to contact spirit guides and bring their messages into this moment for us sort of angle. And my somewhat secular approach brings a lot more of the focus on the counseling techniques and the sort of very important intentional aspects of the practice to kind of root it in a much more grounded and practical, almost logical, very cerebral conversation as opposed to a purely spiritual, metaphysical experience. That's sort of where I land on the spectrum, and a little bit of both. But that said, the sort of secular slant that I introduce can sometimes mean that I need to dispel some preconceptions about tarot when I'm sitting down with someone before we dive right into the reading. And I mean, often that is someone's expecting this rote, I'm going to divine and tell you what is happening, what you should do, and things of this kind of vein, which are, as you probably know, having watched my stream, not how I like to approach a tarot card reading in my personal practice. A lot of times when I sit down with a reading and I ask the question, what's your previous experience or ideas with tarot? And they say, none, I have no idea, what is this? I love that. I actually really love starting from there because I get to, from the ground up, kind of introduce my own unique take on how tarot works. And for those of you who are readers in the chat, you will develop your own approach to how to do a tarot card reading, and I encourage you to revel and celebrate as much the times that you get to set the stage and the expectation for precisely what the reading is about and how it's going to be conducted when you're sitting with someone who really doesn't know what to expect and really isn't bringing any preconceptions into it. So a lot of times there are people that think they're just going to be told what they need to do and what they should be doing. And I love to set the stage in a way where I'm going to talk about, what your goals are and, that what you should be doing is kind of determined by that. Whenever I'm met with the expectation that I'm going to tell you what to do, a lot of times I go into the cautionary conversation of, I don't want you to sit down and expect me to tell you what to do. Because honestly, once someone has centered themselves in that space, It's essentially disempowering. They're taking away their own ability to make their free will and choices. But, so I'll end up moving in that direction. And a lot of times my conversation about dispelling some misconceptions about tarot involves saying, I believe in free will, I believe in choice. And, therefore the choices that you make will direct the course of how things happen. So I don't want to rote tell you exactly what will happen. And that also, I don't want to tell you exactly what you should do. Rather, I want to be able to inform you and give you information that makes you more certain about what you want to do so that you can make the choice for yourself, and that the information that we glean from a reading can help you on your way to that choice. Now, if I were completely secular, that would be the entire process, and that would be end all be all. I do employ, of course, some of the spiritual guidance and the spiritual technique that I've talked about previously, wherein I'm saying I will assert that I can tell you, based on what you're trying to achieve, you should do this. That I can suggest a course of action that'll bring you closest to your target goals, the achievements that you kind of laid out for us in the reading. And there is a certain amount of prediction buried in that, wherein I'm saying do this to A to reach B. Not asserting necessarily that B will happen, and not really keen on talking time frames about when B will happen. I will have the conversation about how far uphill and how much work do we see between A and B, and sometimes, if your goals are set very high, it's going to take more time and more effort to reach them. And, we can talk about prepping for the amount of time and effort you may be taking on to reach a certain goal that we've established for ourselves in the reading. And that's where I keep a little bit of the realism and the practical nature in my reading, while still bundling in that touch of magic, where I am going to make a suggestion that's like, if you want to get lucky, try this. That's your lucky course of action towards that goal from A to B. So when I'm talking with people about, predicting the future, which comes up a lot, one of the misconceptions I consider a misconception, though this is more of an opinion. I know that people have different practices with tarot. I do not practice tarot in a way where I assert that I can predict the future. I hinted at this a moment ago, talking about my belief in free will contradicts an ability for me to predict a determined future. So when I have someone that sits down, and that often is one of the things that people will sit down expecting in a reading, which is why I'm, of course, asking up front, what are you expecting? Let's make sure we're on the same page before we're drawing cards and talking about it. If someone's expecting me to predict the future, it becomes the conversation of exactly the extent and limit of how much prediction I'm going to offer. And that the predictions I will offer will have to be grounded and rooted in those elements of, the achievements that you've set up, the circumstances that you've selected to base your reading around. So I'll go back, and when people, want me to predict the future in a reading, it becomes a conversation of what particularly I mean to predict, which is the methods that they can employ to reach their goals. Those are the big ones that come up. One of the other misconceptions about tarot that comes up a lot, and I'm going to start subtly drawing some cards on the side here because I want to draw examples of the mood and place, tone and tenor, and nature of the way a conversation could go for each of these misconceptions. And so I'll double back and get us particular examples of some of these as I go through. So predicting the future, that's one conversation that comes up a lot, talking about prediction. Another one is wanting to read somebody else's mind. This comes up a lot, especially in relationship readings. I want to know what he is thinking of me. Classic. It's all the time. And many tarot card readers will challenge this. I think some will give you the answer if you really want that question. But many will say, I'm not going to read somebody else's mind who isn't here. It's sort of invasive in terms of privacy. So even a reader who would assert the ability to do that, which I more or less don't offer in my practice, in that I don't know that I could, and more importantly, I definitely don't want to, because it is an invasion of someone's privacy in a way to try and reveal something of theirs, their thoughts and feelings that they haven't chosen yet to reveal. That's left unknown to us. And so there's a certain ethical mindset that comes up wherein if I were to do that, who would I be serving and to what end? So a lot of times when I'm approached in the reading, what do they think of me? I will immediately redirect us, and this is going to be a big theme for all of these. I will redirect us to what are you trying to achieve? What are you seeking to achieve here in the reading? And why are you asking me that question? A lot of times when I receive a question in a reading that brings up a conflict of interest in the way that I want to conduct a reading, or is unanswerable for some reason, I'm going to redirect to why are you asking that, and what does that indicate about what you try to achieve? More often than not, with the what does he think of me question is leading to I want him to like me. And then we can have a conversation about what's your lucky course of action towards attracting this potential mate. That's a great conversation, and I feel really good about talking about where you're at and what you're bringing into the situation and how you can move through where you're at to best potentially meet them in the way that you want. Whatever kind of friendship, partnership, romantic relationship you're trying to conceive here, I'll build that roadmap for you and offer the amount of prediction I do in saying these are the methods to get you there. And sometimes the message is be patient, wait, now's not the time, and that can be a really hard answer, because sometimes the answer is no, they're not interested, and there's not a way for you to make them interested, and that can be hinted at in that kind of situation. But again, I don't think it's useful necessarily for someone to get a reading and then leave with this idea that they love me or they love me not. Anytime I'm put in the position to make a coin flip for you, I'm going to be like, that's not the kind of conversation I was wanting to have, because I'm just going to set you on your way and you're going to leave with this conviction, believing that. And I wonder how that will serve you, and how true it is or isn't, and how true it will or won't become once you believe in it. Remembering that, of course, what we expect and what we believe in through, things like law of attraction and however you want to describe it, often change the course of how we act and how things resolve for us in a way that usually trend towards what we were expecting or believing. So if I tell you they don't like you and then you leave this reading feeling like, I guess I'm going to give up on it, then it's definitely not going to happen. If I tell you the time is not right now and you need to wait, engage it, and if you recognize this kind of situation come up, that is the time for you to engage. Since you want to engage, I'm going to give you that card to recognize when it's time to. Then you can continue to navigate that relationship with the best of your knowledge and intention and ability in a way that's more informed and has the right patience or the right ambition or confidence that you need to make it real, should it be. So that's kind of, when I get the what does he think of me question, the direction that I kind of take it. One of the other misconceptions that comes through a reading is the expectation that the cards hold some sort of massive power here where they carry and contain and have the message. And that, when I get to the end of a reading and someone was like, I'm amazed how accurate the cards are. I'm like, well, thanks for recognizing the ability that your medium had, because the cards are just a tool. They really are. This is paper. This is cardstock. This is not much on its own until you put it in the hands of a reader. So there's this idea that the cards have some mystical power or presence of their own, and it distracts from the reality that the magic manifests from yours and my connection kind of coming together and our collected trying to draw spiritual insight and guidance from those who might share it with us. That's where the magic lies. The cards are an intermediary for us to conduct that conversation and that process, but on their own, they're just cards. And it's easy to get carried away with thinking that the cards hold some magical, deeper truth, when in reality we need to be looking at where that magical, deeper truth is coming forward from within ourselves. Whenever I see someone becoming too obsessed with thinking the message is coming directly from the cards, I like to take a step back and remind them that the message is coming from you and me. We're constructing and developing it. And we're drawing on some spiritual insight to add a couple of really choice lines that bring us to those really powerful realizations and set us in some really powerful places in our hearts and minds to move forward with what we're trying to achieve. But the cards are just a tool. They are not doing everything. In fact, they're doing much less than you, or especially your reader, is doing in the moment that we're really conducting the reading. So that's usually an important one to address also, to not be too distracted. I do have the two cameras. I am looking at them. They're a part of it. They're fun, but notice which one's bigger. That's where the action happens. That's where the magic really is. Those are some of the biggest and most common misconceptions, and I think 90% of the time it's going to fall into one of those three. There are a couple less common things that can come up. Every now and then you'll sit down with someone who, and this almost falls under the umbrella of thinking, what do the cards do? But I should talk a little bit more at length about those who want to just sit and listen, because that's not an ineffective way to conduct a reading necessarily, but it does call on the reader to establish a lot more about what is to be preconceived about what is said and how to effectively listen if you are. And this, in this moment, I think calls a lot more on the reader to really key into and empathically recognize where the client is and sort of what space we're navigating and how they're receiving what you're sharing. Because it's easy to fall into the slippery, dangerous place of you're listening because you want me to tell you what you should do. And it's easy to fall into that. You've got the cards in front of you. They're offering great suggestions. You're vibing. You feel the significance and the power behind the words that are being channeled to you through the spiritual guidance. And you just want to put them out there. But when you receive an idea that suggests you could go this way to achieve this, it's so important to cushion it that way and to say, here's information for you to use and do with what you will. Again, I believe in free will. And I want to keep reiterating this while you're just listening. Don't get too carried away with what I say. I'm going to offer you a lot of very useful input for you to take into your own heart and mind and then decide what you'll do with. And I really want to keep outlining that process, especially when I arrive at a place in the reading where I am saying something that trends along the lines of do this. If I'm ever sharing a message that says you should do this, I really want to make sure that when it's just listening, I have very well articulated why I'm suggesting that particular should and where that particular should might lead. And to really contain it in that and not have it become an almighty, all-seeing, this is what you must do, which is easy to get caught up in. And I've sat with a lot of people who, and now I just like know the look in their eyes. It's just so easy to see now when they're looking at you like every word you say is gospel, you are the prophet, and everything you say is totally infallible and they'll believe 100%. And when you've arrived at that place with someone, it's a powerful state because they've, got themselves in that open-minded space where they're ready to be malleable and flexible and assume any course of action and any belief that they believe will serve them best. But it's really important to remind them in that moment what the power of belief is and what power they are ascribing to the words that I offer by choosing to believe them in the way that they are. And not to forget that the power in my words is in part made by the powerful mindset that they are moving into. And it, again, if they're listening and they are starting to ascribe, as it's easy to think will happen in a fortune telling setting in the tarot reading, that I'm going to give them all the answers, or that what I'm saying is infallibly true, just have to remind them how their power, their thoughts, and their belief are all a part of the magic and the manifestation. And they shouldn't lose sight of that. And it's important for them to hold sight of that when they walk away from the reading with the message, because they had to enact it and they have to understand their own power to make it come all the way through. Thank you, Brittany, for commenting in the chat. Of course, it's the cards. It's magic. And yeah, it often feels that way. It often feels that way. And that's why it's so easy to slide into the mindset where the cards are so magic and the cards are so accurate. The cards are full of such magical, omniscient truth. When you're sitting with somebody who talks a lot, it's a lot easier to dispel or catch those misconceptions or potential misapplication of the knowledge and words that you provide, because there's a lot more collaborative thinking happening explicitly outside in the discussion. So it's easy to redirect an idea offered when it comes to you and you're like, oh wait, that didn't sit with me right, instead of needing to be doing the checks along the way and really, really carefully cushioning what you offer. I love both styles of reading. I was just about to try and decide if I had a favorite between the I do all the talking, you do all the talking, or somewhere in the middle. It's a conversation. And I just drew a blank. I was like, I don't think I can pick a favorite. Honestly, they all bring such a fun, different flavor. And I enjoy the variety. Oh, excuse me. I enjoy the variety. I think I would get tired of one if I only had one. Couldn't pick a favorite. I want to take a look at some of these cards that could provide examples of the kind of attitudes someone could bring forward into each of these particular common misconceptions that are brought forward to the tarot table. To talk about how I might navigate the space with that person when it came up in that way. I started talking about, I believe it was predicting the future. That's right, I was in, what does he think of me? What should I do? Predicting the future. Or it was the other way around. I believe it was the other way around. But I'm going to talk about predicting the future first, so I'm going to pick that card. For those of you that are like watching this later, like, I can scrub back in the video and I know you're wrong. But for whatever it is, the intention is set very clearly for this card that I want to talk about when someone expects me to predict the future. How would I navigate it if the setting were like this card? And I want to establish a little more intention for this, as I love doing all the time before I draw cards, which is that I want it to be a certain kind of situation that may be relatable to people in the chat who have either brought this expectation to their personal practice reading or have encountered it when reading for someone else. I would love for my expansion and my description of a really particular scenario and energy that someone could bring forward in a reading to expand on that so it can land somewhere really personally significant for us here in the chat. That example is going to be the Empress. The Empress is a beautiful card all about being this character who is a really, really potent provider. I am drawing from my Lazy Crow tarot deck that I am not over. It is a great deck that I kickstarted, and I heartily recommend you find it. Beautiful, minimalistic imagery, very progressive, modern, a lot of like non-binary and all sorts of just diversity in what appears on the cards all over the place. Very cool deck. The Empress is this kind of, a lot of times when you sit down in a reading, someone will come forward with like even a career question or a financial question and be saying, okay, I want you basically to tell me which stock I invest in, or if I should switch jobs because which will make me more money. And those are kind of dicey questions. That comes up a lot. People, wanting to be able to predict the future about something so fundamental. I saw the Empress here, and it suggested to me the kind of situations where it is about, I want to be a provider. I want to have the means to provide. And I really want to be in a position where people are coming to me for those resources, and I have them. And that's great. If you want to achieve that, that's great. So, if someone's asking me to predict the future for them to that end, I'm already like, well, we've got a good, clear focus for what your goals are. I might start talking about how to achieve them. And if it's a choice between two jobs or which investment strategy, I could draw cards to kind of look at what is the work that you do in each of these jobs or each of those strategies that maximizes your return. And you can choose which work you'd like to shoulder and which you think would be more lucrative, which would bear more fruit. But I'm not going to tell you, that one is going to have a 22% greater return than the other. Do that. I'm going to give you a little, and again, there is an amount of prediction happening here where I'm saying, should you jump ship and go for that other job? It's going to look a lot more like, here's our example. Ooh, a reversed six. Reverse Six of Pentacles, which to anyone who knows the Six of Pentacles being usually, I have wealth to share and give out, seeing it appear in its reversed position could suggest bad luck, right, on that route. I would interpret this to say the work there is that you're going to have to continually be investing a lot of your time and energy in it before it's giving a significant return. There's a lot of work to do and a lot of yourself to put out. Maybe this is a personal business startup that's like, okay, it's going to cost a lot to start, and you got to be ready for that first year of accepting the business as a loss to get it built up before it's at the place where you're really cruising with it. Be ready for that. Let's say I want all these job opportunities to be prosperous and fruitful to me, and if you think you can afford that and you really want to do that kind of angle, then great. Do it. If you're not in a place where you could afford that, maybe now's not the time. And maybe that's what comes forward in the reading, is recognizing the reality of how much it will cost to kind of go on that fork. Versus, well, I could just get the job that pays now, but not a lot and not what I want to do, and accept that the process will be a reversed Three of Swords, and I will just feel awful about it and feel like I regret the choice of having put myself in work that I knew would be so awful to have to suffer. And that's going to be what I have to soldier through, is just feeling like I regret the choice because it's just continually disappointing and breaking my heart that I have to wake up for this job every day. And, in this case, I would be looking at someone who's like, you came to me for a tarot card reading because none of your options felt good. You were like, a job I don't want that pays, really cool potential career opportunity that will definitely not pay for quite a while. It's the internship. It's unpaid. Maybe it'll become, that job in the industry that I really want. But, this is not a comfortable reading all of a sudden. And maybe once we've arrived in that place, and here we are. If we had done this reading in the way where I was going to predict the future, and they said, which will be better? Which should I do? That answer is nuanced. I don't know. What are you trying to do? Be gratified or make money? Because if we didn't establish that before I started drawing cards and telling you what to do, I would tell you that both of these are unlucky and bad, and you should consider something else entirely. And maybe that's something that would come up in the reading. You'd be like, I could I could fall in with my parents again and just not work, move to a different city, and soul search and figure out what I want to do and how I want to do it. And suddenly we consider the work ahead there. which is a reverse tower. I'm so sorry for this hypothetical person. This is very challenging reading, where that turns out to be just continually worse than they could have possibly expected overall. The whole way through. Maybe it becomes obvious to them in this moment, well, duh, if I were to not pursue my career at all, I'm just going to be in a standstill. And I've kind of had budding conflict in my relationship with my parents anyway, and they're probably not going to appreciate me loafing around the basement. And it's just going to be, awful life at home and miserable depression, and okay, fine. And this is suddenly a really challenging place for this person to make a choice that doesn't offer them a lot of very fruitful or obviously pleasing courses of action to choose from. So at this point in the reading, having potentially exhausted, and I'm loving actually going through the hypothetical reading that stemmed from the please predict the future of my career opportunities. At this point, arrived here, I feel like we've now gotten into a much deeper conversation of how do I cope with these challenging circumstances? If I'm stuck in a reversed Three of Swords, because now I'm starting to think, okay, I don't want to go home to my parents. That's fine. We don't have to talk about that anymore. If I'm, stuck with, and I can't even afford this right now, given my life circumstance. So deep breath. This sucks, but I have to take that off the table too. I know where I'm going, but I don't like it. How do I make the most of this? And then I'm going to ask, what's the most of it? I want to attain as much happiness as I can. I want to provide for myself well enough that I'm able to get by. And I want to eventually be moving in a direction that gets me out of this space and out of this job and on to the next higher, greater thing that I'm obviously after. And now I am ready, set, go. Now I am get ready, Three of Swords on the horizon. We just established this and you're willing yourself to move into it. You now have an idea of what you want to do in that circumstance. Here's your mindset. Here's your course of action to really carry that through to the finish. And, we've got to really carry the reading all the way through to where you are confident that you're making a choice that you're sure is the best for yourself, and that you're sure how you're going to be doing it. Like if this was a happy card, maybe it would not feel challenging. I'd be like, yeah, let me off right here. I'll go and do that and be happy. But if it's this kind of situation, this kind of reading, I'm going to be like, okay, take a deep breath, rocky road ahead. Here's how to navigate it so that you can at least navigate the rocky road with some confidence and some empowerment and some faith. Here we go. I've got this mindset of the Wheel of Fortune. Your time will come. Keep remembering, hold on to the hope and the faith that your lucky moment will happen. That's so important. I just talked about the power of belief. That's totally at play here in this hypothetical reading for this hypothetical person. That hilariously could be someone here in the chat. I just realized because we, tried to relate it so much to us here. Welcome, Elizabeth. Thank you for tuning in. And if in this hypothetical reading where this is your winning mindset, where I'm like, I'm going to get lucky eventually, even though I clearly recognize that's not now. Holy crap, that is definitely not happening right now. I'm going to get lucky eventually. I have to hold on to that even while I'm feeling awful in this job I didn't want. And I would eventually do the course of action. Here's the reversed Hanged Man, which is the suggestion that try to, even though your situation is not changing, see it in a new and different way that makes it refreshing, makes it new, makes it feel totally different, breathes new life into it without the circumstance actually really changing. And be ready to be stuck there where every day that you go to this soul-sucking job and come home, you're going to have to take a deep breath, meditate, and once again, set yourself in, I am on my right path. I'm doing the best I can to arrive where I want to be. These steps are necessary, and for that, my effort and my time is a beautiful display of my righteous power. Okay. Time to go to bed and do it all again tomorrow. And like, wow, what a story to spell out. Still sounds challenging, but I feel a lot better leaving someone off with maintain hope and be ready for the daily practice of finding love and appreciation for a situation that really honestly weighs very heavy on the heart. All of that because you said I want you to predict the future about my career. Very different kind of conversation than your best bet is take that gas station clerk job you mentioned. It got the best card. Good luck. That'll be $70. You know, I really want to investigate and go deep into your experience day to day and know that I'm leaving you with something that you can put into practice today and onward, considering the scope of the issue that we brought to the conversation with the cards. I've noticed that it seems the quality of my stream has improved, which is encouraging. Let me know in the chat if that's not true. I wonder if that I can just blame my ISP for all of that. Yay, take good things. They happen sometimes. Let's see how good Adrian's memory is. This card was about the what does he think of me situation that comes up a lot, which I talked about redirecting into a conversation about what are you trying to achieve in this relationship? It's probably because you're trying to attract a romantic relationship. And now we've got a really cool and interesting conversation to dig into, and I'm happy to investigate that. Let's draw a card to give context to a specific example. Any of you single and searching, start listening. This may be for you. I'm drawing the Chariot. This is a cool card. This is a neat card. I would love this kind of situation for this kind of reading. And I can't get over this deck. I'm sorry. I'm going to feature the Lazy Crow's Chariot here. We've got, I love the two horses pulling the Chariot have black and white hair because they're usually resembling contrasting, conflicting forces that are pulling in opposite directions. It's kind of neat that they're facing inward instead of outward. There's a little more collaboration between those forces suggested here. And at the very least, typically the figure at the head of the Chariot is directing them, and is the one who has got the potency and the ability to go ahead and keep them moving on a similar course forward. So I almost see the reins there acting in a way, we're almost seeing the Chariot rider's influence on these horses in the illustration of this card. I love the Chariot rider's very prominent, powerful stance, sword raised, confident hand here. I am in control. The Chariot is an interesting situation where there is a lot of chaotic kind of motion. It follows out of the Lovers, where you've decided to go off the beaten road and do something deviant, and that'll lead you to unexpected or uncharted territory. And now you're in uncharted territory once you're in the Chariot. You have to follow through with the mess you started, the mess you wanted, and very fun space. And you're acting in your power and going in your own direction. Taking this kind of scenario into a relationship reading, if I had someone that was coming to me looking for a prospective connection, I suddenly imagined that, okay, so I've got this friend group and there's a couple new people that have been introduced to it, and I'm into one of them. I'm pretty sure my friend is too, and I'm not sure how interested they are or aren't. I do know they're single, or poly and open, or whatever, available one way or another. I'm interested in moving forward in that, but there's a lot of moving pieces, There's all the relationships in the friend group to consider, a friend group that I am invested in and have put a lot of energy into. There's a lot of moving pieces in my relationship with this person. We've got a good friendship going. I think that obviously we've got chemistry I've become interested in, but at the same time, we could be just really good close friends. And there's always the I don't want to screw that up kind of moment. So I'm navigating all of that. And it's a lot. I'm like, wow, okay, that is a lot. And it's great if we could, sit down in a reading and establish that much before moving forward, because that's so much context and there's so much at play. There's the friend that you are considered about stepping on the toes of or inciting conflict in the relationship of. And that's maybe a conversation we want to have. There's the obvious person that you want to attract to you, and that's a conversation that we might want to have. How do I do that? How do I do this in a way that's respectful to my friend? How do I score my partner here in the situation? And maybe I've got this, question of, I know that a lot of other members of the friend group have been watching me and my friend a little warily, And, I'm most concerned about this friend, but there's also kind of the question of how it fits into the bigger picture with everyone else. I'm kind of wondering what they'll think. They're kind of expecting me to ruin things, so that's a thing. These could all be elements of the conversation that came forward, and the kind of work that you do in each of these areas to achieve your end of, what is it? Well, okay, I want a harmonious relationship with everyone in the friend group. I would love a romantic relationship with prospective partner. And I just want to be happy, and all be all. A lot can come up in that moment that you were really doing the investigative work about what do I really want. And it can be really interesting what that brings forward. It might even bring up there are more cards we need to draw. And at the very least, it is a very important step in the process and the kind of work that we need to do to make the reading really fruitful and effective here. I really want to, there's so much power that comes from that, from first the self-assessment. So much power there. And I will take a moment as an aside. Sometimes you might be sitting with someone who, prompted with that question, is like, I'm not sure really what I want. I'm not sure. That happens, and that's fair. And it's in these times that I might, with a little hesitation, offer a card as a suggestion. And I really mean very strongly to say suggestion, because I never want to arrive in the place where I'm telling you what you should do. And if I'm telling you what you want, I am basically telling you what you should do. And so I might draw cards as a suggestion of something that you might want. And then you can soul search and see where it lands and if it brings anything up. Drawing cards as random prompts is a really useful practice in tarot and can add a lot of dimension to a reading. And in fact, if you are practicing with a purely secular approach, all of your cards are drawn in this way, that they are random suggestions that are prompts for you to engage your own thoughts and feelings and see what comes forward if that is suggested to you. Kind of like when you're like, I don't know if I want pizza or Chinese. And then you flip a coin and get Chinese and realize you really wanted pizza. And then you order pizza. And, so the card could be that. Maybe what you want is just to not be put on the defensive in your friend group. Not to be, I've drawn a 9 of Wands and I'm riffing on that as a suggestion for something you might want in this circumstance. Maybe all you want is just to not have to defend yourself from the leery friends who are like, are you sure it's what you want to get into? And to defend yourself from the friend who's like, I can't believe you took Jonathan from me. And, all of this. And then maybe the person will be like, actually, that is one of my greater concerns. Or maybe that's, I don't know, that's not really it. Or maybe that's it. And maybe we're drawing more cards as more suggestions. What if it's the 6 of Cups? You're just wanting things to kind of feel similarly to how they are because it's good, and you don't want to lose how the friend group has been feeling. And you want to retain that feeling of goodness and fondness that has been present in the friend group. Yeah. And maybe that's so similar to the other one, but it framed it in a way differently that suddenly poked and prodded and brought forward. Yeah, and in fact, I want it to deepen my friendships. And we start moving in that direction a little bit and we get somewhere. I want to take a look at these other 3 cards, and I'm going to do it briefly because I want to move on to my other misconceptions without getting too sucked into a hypothetical reading that's totally hypothetical and maybe not, because thanks for listening, and I sure hope my suggestions help anyone here. Looking at I want to attract my romantic partner. Here's how I might do that. 5 of Swords reversed. Woo! Here's how you might do it. There's no bars held in the 5 of Swords, and there's no method that is inappropriate in the 5 of Swords. So here's how do I attract my partner? Well, I don't give a damn about what anyone else in the group thinks, and whoops, I tried to keep it PG and I just slipped there. But the 5 of Swords reversed kind of had that energy to it, so it came forward. I don't really care what my friend thinks. I don't really care what the rest of the group thinks, and I'm not going to worry about those consequences. I'm going to get what's mine. I'm pretty sure that I can bag this, and no matter what happens along the way, I'm going to continue doing that. I'm reversed. I'm going to stick in this place and not progress. Okay. There you go. That is how you attract them and score the relationship. And that conversation could suddenly be like, I don't know if I actually really want to do that. You know, maybe that's not super the most comfortable proposition, but we asked, how do I attract them? And the answer is, you know, maybe not what you want to do. Maybe that indicates to you that I should be thinking about my friend a little more. How do I keep things good with my friend? Here's the Knight of Cups. Here's the one that we wanted over in the other spot, but it landed with the friend. This is, I have my heart on my sleeve. I'm so romantic. I am forthcoming. I am putting my feelings out there to everyone all the time. I'm going to approach my friend and be like, my heart's overflowing and I'm into Jonathan. And I expect that you are too. And I just really want us to move forward in a way where our love is not diminished. And I really think we can do it because I've got so much love for you and budding love for them. And we're both considering poly anyway, so let's just both date Jonathan. You know, and then there you go. Very different approach and very different concern here in the Knight of Cups than what we were doing in the Five of Swords. The Five of Swords was very heady, and I'm going to do whatever I can, master manipulator, any means necessary to meet my ends of winding up with Jonathan. Here I'm putting my feelings out there, especially in this relationship with Lisa, my friend, who I might be stepping on the toes of, and I'm being very forthcoming. And everything's on the table. None of my feelings are concealed. And we're going to navigate those waters and move forward through them because I'm the knight and I'm always going to move forward. I'm just going to dive into the emotional realm and soldier through and figure out what it's about with love on my mind. And suddenly there's a suggestion of some contradiction between the just get Jonathan or negotiate with Lisa, which we probably anticipated, and that's why we brought it up before we got into the reading anyway. But we've got a really clear perspective on what it looks like doing these two things. And, you know, if that Five of Swords reversed is suddenly sinking into the pit of your stomach, like, ew, maybe we're coming to the realization that, yeah, I wanted pizza, not Chinese. Sorry, Jonathan. And when I'm looking at the rest of the friend group, I have a Page of Wands, who is in its reverse position, which is the suggestion that, you know, remembering the intention I drew for this card is I want to promote the most harmony in my whole friend group. And that is that I am not overindulging this impulsive Page of Wands character in a way that I'm just doing what I want because I want to. I'm kind of inhibiting that character trait, that quality, which is singing a really just similar tune to the rest of what we've drawn. And at this point in the reading, it's like obvious that we've drawn more cards than we needed to get a simpler message across. You should probably go talk to Lisa and be honest about your feelings and work it out. And maybe we're worried about how that conversation with Lisa will go, and suddenly we've got a ready, set, go, and I'm choosing Knight of Cups, and I'm going to be ready to be a Knight of Cups. And I really want to maneuver this in a way where I wind up with Jonathan if I can, and it's the right thing, because I really wanted to do it with respect to Lisa's feelings and my own and the friend group. And I want to do this in a way that, you know, leaves us all feeling good. And, you know, suddenly we go through it, set and go are cards that I really wish I had more time to dive into, but I really want to get into at least this third common misconception in tarot, which is the cards have all the answers and will tell me what to do, which is a great one to dive into. The get set is this like Ten of Swords. It's just be ready for the worst. Be ready for sitting down and Lisa being really hurt and it becoming clear that there's no way you're going to be with Jonathan without it being an absolute crap show. There we go. We're PG. Crap show. And you know, going forward, you're just gonna have the mindset that you're prepped and ready for that. Be ready for the worst. If you really want this to go well, be open to the exact answers you don't want to hear happening. That's an important precursor to going into this conversation in a way that really lets you manifest the harmony and the peace that you want. And that makes sense to me. You're gonna want to approach Lisa in a way where, like, I'm open to hearing whatever you have to say or whatever you're feeling when I lay my feelings on the line, because I know it may be mixed. I'm ready for the worst. Not necessarily expecting, but I'm ready. And then in my go, it's this reversed Ten of Pentacles, where it's just the recognition that, you know, things in the friend group aren't totally stable right now. And that's why you're here getting a reading. Jonathan entered the friend group and suddenly things are not settled. It's not super secure. The relationships are a little weird. Maybe the group is splintering in two. Maybe this is introducing conflict that's going to be really difficult for you and Lisa to negotiate. And it's going to be weird trying to settle whatever you and Lisa agree to with the rest of the group and with Jonathan. And just be ready for things to be a little unsettled and unstable for a little bit, Go. Embrace instability. That's a part of your instating harmony. And that's an interesting message, to go into that conversation knowing I'm going to upset things, but that's okay. That's one of the steps on my way to arriving at that deeper peace and harmony, because right now I have unresolved feelings that are the thorn in my side. And I need to take it out, and it's going to bleed a little bit, but then I can start bandaging it. That'd be a cool reading. I'd love that. Wow, what an interesting and nuanced situation that became. So much more than me telling you after drawing which was like the first card, I don't know, the Five of Swords reversed, which would be like, no, you should not do this relationship. It would be bad and you would be a bad person. End of conversation. So much less happening there. So much less happening there for me. So, this is why I like doing the readings I do. I've really run myself towards the end of my hour, and fair warning to everyone, I may run over a little bit because I don't want to cut myself off here as I dive into this last card, because I want to talk about the misconception where people expect that the message is all coming from the cards, and overlooking the fact that it's much more coming from their reader and themselves. Or in the case of doing a reading for yourself, it's coming from you. And that's an interesting misconception to navigate. I've had a lot of readings where it comes up in the middle or towards the end of a reading. Is that comment, I can't believe how accurate the cards are. And that's an interesting moment to catch and to say, 1, thank you for saying I'm accurate. 2, it's me, not the cards. And 3, there's some important things for you to consider here. The message that we crafted is one that we collaborated in creating. It is more powerful than a random suggestion from some cardstock. It is a powerfully formulated message and direction that we used spiritual guidance and our emotional intellectual connection and investigation to manufacture and deliver. It is so much more than a really good random lucky guess. Some lucky guesses were part of it. That's the fun and magic of the tarot reading. But they're a supporting character in what is a lot of really good work that we just did together. Don't discount that, and don't forget that you carry with you that magic away from the reading, away from the cards. That's so important for readers to hear. You can do the same work without your cards. And important, I think, also for someone receiving a reading to hear. The work done here is not so exclusive to the cards. The message that you're taking away is yours, and you could make another a month from now by sitting down and looking inward and really thinking about it. And that's the point. That's the purpose of the practice. That's what we're doing. I want to look at this example of the kind of situation that this might come up in. And I see a 4 of Pentacles. I drew this 4 of Pentacles earlier. I can't remember if it was on stream or in my own practice. But I love the illustration of this 4 of Pentacles on the Lazy Crow Tarot. You see this person, and he's clutching onto his pentacle, as is classic in the imagery, but he's got this very angry expression. There's someone reaching up, trying to get some pentacles that he's pinned underneath his foot, and he's like, no, they're mine. And it's typically the miser, the greedy miser is kind of the character depicted in this card. But I just love how this card introduces another character that's not normally, to me, present in a lot of the classic Rider-Waite imagery. Someone trying to reach up and get the pentacles, and him angrily rejecting and resisting, their reach. The 4 of Pentacles is, about that, about conserving yourself and conserving your energy and keeping your investments to yourself for them to mature later. You're not in a space right now where you have a lot to offer. This is a time to recoup and hold to your own. and maybe in excess. Who knows? That's often interpreted in this card. And I don't necessarily interpret it that way that often, but I offer that interpretation because I know that many do. When I got here, honestly, I would see, I was talking a lot about how when you say it's all in the cards, you are neglecting to recognize how much magic happened outside of what the cards were. And in a way, you are, like this Four of Pentacles, keeping the magic contained and not really letting it express all that it could have or all that it really can. Because the message that you're taking away from this tarot reading could grow and change as you put it into practice. So many things we discuss might be like, you're trying to achieve this, and knowing that, I'm going to draw a card for if you recognize this happen, then you want to do this. And if you recognize this thing you're worried about happening, then you want to do this. And it is not a straight, I'm going to hold on to the one thing that I should do that the cards told me to do. Your life goes on and you have to make your difficult, nuanced choices, and you have to keep thinking and really feeling your way through life's interesting, nebulous, and uncertain moments. You can't just turn off your mind and just shut down and be like, I'm going to go to low energy mode, stop trying, stop putting myself out. I'm not going to invest any more effort. We're done, right? We did the tarot reading, you told me what to do, the cards told me what to do, and now we're done, right? No. I advised you on how to continue carrying out your work. We did some work to determine a really sound plan that satisfied the uncertainty you were experiencing in this moment, that offered clear direction, and now you need to do it. It's not over. I didn't just tell you what's happening and now you're done. There's still more to do. This is why people check in for another reading a month later. It's really good to follow up and keep going deeper. And sometimes there are places deeper that we can't arrive at until we have experienced and navigated our way to them. That's, why you don't get one tarot reading at the beginning of your life and you're set. That's why you don't go to a counselor or therapist for one session and suddenly you're cured. It's a process. And it doesn't end when the reading finishes. And it's important to remember that. You can't just pack it away and go home and be done.